All right, number 5 is how are we going to be dealing with pests on our permaculture farm? So I don't know if you've ever heard this, but I've seen this firsthand that healthy plants get eaten a lot less. They get attacked a lot less from pests. And that's because when plants are healthy, they have defenses in place just like people do, just like our immune system does to repel things from eating it. So the first thing I'm going to be talking about for helping your plants be healthier is mycorrhizal fungi. And the way that you can really boost the mycorrhizal fungi in your soil is having a lot of plant diversity. They feed on the sugars produced by your plants. So if you have plants that have drastically different characteristics, right? Some with much deeper root structures, some with more shallow root structures, some that add nitrogen to the soil, that will create a system with the mycorrhizal fungi. It will create a network that helps balance all the other plants out. If you have kind of a monocrop or you don't have enough diversity in there, even if you have mycorrhizal fungi in there, it's not going to be dispersing the nutrients back and forth between the plants and be able to address the deficits as well as if you had a bunch of diverse plants and trees and shrubs and ferns and roots and tubers and all these different things that are going to be adding something different to the soil that are going to be able to be transferred by the mycorrhizal fungi to your other plants to support them. So number 1 is diversity. Number 2 for dealing with pests is put the native species of plants and edible native species of plants around the perimeter of our property, not within the middle of it, because wildlife wants to eat plants that are native. They want to eat plants that are familiar to them. They don't want to eat your foreign vegetables. They don't want to eat crops that they don't know what they are. They'd much rather stick to ones that they know, which are the native ones. So if you can plant or help support the native species by creating kind of a living wall of native species around the perimeter of your land, that can be something that prevents a deer from going too far into your property to forage on your sweet, sweet vegetable garden. I also want to provide water around the perimeter of our property so that, once again, animals have access to water. They don't need to go all the way in and eat my water rich lettuce in order to get water. They can just get it from the buckets that are surrounding the property. And once again, I do want to invite wildlife to our property, and having water sources, having food sources that these animals enjoy. I mean, they all need water. That will invite them and help create a balanced ecosystem. We also plan on implementing fencing. I don't exactly know what type of fencing yet, but I do like the idea of a living fence in the form of things like blackberries, blueberries, bunching bamboo, grapes, elderberry, rose, hawthorn. A lot of these things have thorns, so it will kind of prevent some of the animals like deer from encroaching closer and eating some of those other plants like I mentioned. But they also produce food for you, right? The grapes and the hawthorns and the elderberries, all these plants are going to be producing food for you and for the animals, and acting as a living hedge, a living protection from animals that are going to be encroaching and overgrazing on things that you don't want them grazing on. A huge one that we're going to be implementing to limit pests and pest issues is diversity. I kind of mentioned this as the first tip, but also planting pollinating plants, lots of flowers, a lot of plants that produce flowers. So those attract predatory insects, and some of them can even repel pests because of their smells, or just the sheer amount of diversity can confuse pests and make it so they can't turn into the plague and start eating literally everything in sight. If they eat one thing and then they look at the next plant and they're like, oh, I don't want anything to do with that, I don't know what the heck that is, they're not going to be as prolific. They're not going to be as much of an issue. Another way of limiting pest issues is by land race gardening. This is a book that you can find on Amazon by Joseph Lofthouse. And it's basically a way of allowing your garden to partake in natural selection, if you want to call it that way. So it's a way of letting your plants that are sick and dying and getting eaten by pests, let them die. I know that's sad, but you should let them die. And I plan on letting them die because they're not meant to be in that area. If they're really not loving it, they're not meant to be there. The plants that thrive on neglect, the plants that thrive on limited amounts of water in, the plants that grow like weeds in my area without very little inputs on my part, those are the ones that survive. And those are the ones that I'm going to save the seeds of. And that is basically land-raised gardening in a nutshell. You save those seeds of those plants whose biology is, for whatever reason, tailored to your area. So we're going to be saving the seeds of the plants that thrive on our property, in our environment, because I don't want plants that get sick. So I'm going to plant those next year. And if they thrive again, I'm going to keep it going. Or if I cross them with some other strain or some other variety and it creates a stronger one, I'm going to save those seeds and plant those ones. But the important thing is that you continue to experiment and try to create better strains that are suited and tailored to your climate. That's the way you're going to get the most production on a permaculture farm. That's the way that you're going to have the least amount of effort and inputs on your end on a permaculture farm. And that's why I highly recommend this book. Another method for reducing pests and dealing with pests is by flooding and not watering frequently. I talk about this in other videos, but if you want trees and plants to have developed deep root structures, if you want a tree's taproot to go down 50 meters, because trees' taproots can go down and down and down super far, they need motivation. They need a lack of water and nutrients, which kind of sounds weird, but you don't want to over fertilize. You don't want to overwater plants because it's going to create shallow root structures and they're going to be flying away in the wind and they're going to be extremely finicky when we don't water them and when we don't feed them, because they're like a whining baby who gets fed and watered all the time. We have to give them some adversity, just like humans. Adversity is the key to growth, right? So they need some level of adversity in order to create that deeper root structure, in order to find those deeper nutrients that they need. And that will help them be more resilient. That will help them fight off pests. I mean, the whole goal with my idea of permaculture is creating a system that kind of looks after itself. I want to give it the nudge that it needs, but once nature kind of gets that nudge, right, where things are working in harmony together, that you have a whole ecosystem kind of with checks and balances together, then you don't need that many inputs anymore at that point, right? It kind of already has the inputs. It already has the fungi taking care of the nutrient and water exchange, and the flooding from the rains will be stored longer because the root structures are much deeper and more robust. The animals are going to be planting the seeds for you. The trees are going to be dropping their own leaves and their branches, and that's going to be adding fertilizer to as a chop and drop to all of the other plants around. So that's kind of the goal that I have in mind, at least for kind of the food forest area. And I do plan on implementing some of that in the grocery row gardens, which I plan on doing. Shout out to David the Good. And that's basically it for how I'm planning on implementing pest management on our permaculture farm. Honestly, there's no way to cover everything that we plan on doing on our permaculture farm, but I did want to give an idea for kind of our plans starting out. I also plan on making a video on the different ways that we plan on making income on our permaculture farm, so stay tuned, that's coming up soon. If you do want to watch our other videos in this series on what we plan on doing starting our permaculture farm, there's 4 more of them. You can find that by clicking this link right here. If you like the content, please like and subscribe. Drop a comment down below of what you liked, what you didn't like, what you would do different, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.